After over 3 decades and 4 generations, we're doing something completely new with the MX-5. We've driven each of the generations. We've raced the NC twice. We've driven an ND with a V8 under the hood. But today we're doing something completely new, and that's driving this MX-5 with an automatic. The question is, does it honor all that is sacred with the Miata, or does it cross a line? Well, there's only one way to find out. Buckle up and let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, the automatic and MX-5 really don't seem to go together, but to be fair, the automatic has been part of the Miata program from nearly day one. In the first gen NA Miata, you could get an automatic, but I've not driven one ever in any generation. And before we get into what this ND with an automatic is like to drive, let's have a look at this in a little more depth. Mechanically, this is fairly similar to all the ND2s we've driven previously, with one big difference. There's still the same 2-liter Skyactiv G 4-cylinder that makes 181 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and 151 pounds of torque at 4,000 RPM. The transmission here, of course, is the 6-speed automatic, and it is not available with a limited slip diff. Suspension is still double wishbones at the front, multi-link at the rear, standard dampers. The Bilsteins are not available. Standard brakes with 280mm rotors. Kinematic posture control is part of the program, and if you need to know more, links here, links below, and we've got a detailed explanation of kinematic posture control. Variable assist steering. Wheels and tires are 17s. Curb weight of this MX-5 Roadster with the automatic is 2,411 pounds, which is 55 pounds more than the manual. Static weight distribution is about 50-50, but on this channel we know it's not static weight distribution that counts, it's how you use it. Did you know that about 80% of you are not subscribed to this channel? Yes, it's true. I looked at the numbers and only 20% of you are. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this video, and of course, share this video. And of course, be sure to check out our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us. There are, of course, a couple of minor changes with the cockpit of an automatic equipped MX-5. That is, paddle shifters in the back of the steering wheel, of course the automatic shifter, and then the lack of a clutch pedal. But after that, this is still that same perfect cockpit, that same perfect driver interface we have come to expect in the MX-5. Essentially everything is the same here, with one major exception beyond the clutch, and that is you can't get Recaro seats, so you're stuck with the basic shaped seat in your automatic equipped MX-5. You get the same straightforward ergonomics, the same straightforward instrument cluster. Everything is essentially the same, save for that lack of a clutch pedal, the gear shift, and the paddles on the back of the steering wheel. Even the steering wheel is the same. The infotainment system is the same. It works on Apple CarPlay just fine. And otherwise, you've got the same compromised cargo carrying capacity inside the cabin and the same sized trunk. One of the big performance differences with the automatic and an MX-5 is its acceleration. I don't know what it does quarter mile, but 0 to 60, this is about a 6.5 second car, which is nearly a full second slower than the manual transmission MX-5. And that's simply because you can launch it a lot harder than you can this automatic. Still has that same great engine that loves to rev to past 7,000 RPM, same modest amount of torque. But when it's paired with the automatic, it is a slightly different driving experience, and it all has to do with the torque converter. When that clutch is engaged, you've just got a more direct connection between your throttle pedal and your inputs on that throttle pedal and the attitude of the MX-5. There's just something lost with the torque converter in this entire equation. You don't have that same level of precision. When I went to play with this at or around or over its limits, it was a different experience. Yes, you still have that same great control with the brake pedal and the steering wheel, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But in terms of that throttle input, it's just not as precise with the torque converter as it would be with a 6-speed manual and a very straightforward clutch. Another thing I learned is that with the automatic, it can make you a little bit lazy. For example, if you're just driving around, you might just use automatic mode, not stay on top of the paddle shifting or the moving this to manual and shifting manual that way, and you're just in drive, and then every once in a while you need some serious acceleration, so you put your foot to the floor, and then the automatic takes a moment or two to downshift a couple of gears and deliver the acceleration that you need. Whereas in a manual-equipped MX-5, you tend to be more engaged. You always tend to be in the right gear, and if you're not, well, that level of engagement is there, so you could go from 5th or 6th down to 3rd or even 2nd fairly quickly because, again, you're more in tune with the car, and the automatic just takes away some of that engagement because it is an automated gearbox. I do miss the precision of that shifter in the manual MX-5 just because it feels so fantastic. You can tell the engineers took their time and did a fantastic job honing that shift action. It's just perfect in the manual. As we discovered in our Base's Ace episode a couple of years ago, the base car with the open rear diff, not a limited slip diff, is just fine because we're talking about a fairly light car with a modest amount of power and torque, and I really didn't miss having a limited slip diff when I drove the base car with its open diff. Really wasn't a problem, and don't mind it. And here it's pretty much the same thing. You really don't miss not having a limited slip diff. There is one thing that this automatic equipped MX-5 has that no other MX-5 has, and that is, you're ready for it? A sport mode. Yes, there's a sport mode for the automatic transmission. I didn't even think of that when I was hopping behind the wheel of this automatic MX-5, but yes, indeed, we have found an MX-5 with a sport mode. Given that this transmission is a traditional automatic, it's not as snappy as a dual clutch would be, that's for sure. Shift action is a little bit on the slower side, and its responsiveness to my inputs on the shift paddles is a little slower than I'd like, but otherwise it does hold gears like it's supposed to. I'm in automatic right now, but if I slap this over to manual, it'll hold gears just fine. Does what it's supposed to do. Gives a little bit of a blip to the throttle on downshifts. It seems very hard to discern that, but otherwise what I think I'd like in an automatic equipped MX-5 is maybe a dual clutch gearbox. Another consideration about the gearbox is I think the final drive is completely different than the manual, and all the gear ratios, all 6 ratios are different in this automatic, so it completely changes the dynamic experience, especially if you're accustomed to coming from a manual ND MX-5. The automatic here is geared completely differently, and it's just a little bit different than the MX-5 manuals that I'm really accustomed to driving. It just doesn't feel as buttoned down as the manual transmission drivetrain, and the fact that the shift action is a little bit slower just adds that whole experience. Again, for some people, they're not going to be bothered by this because they don't drive like I do, and I can't fault them for that. I do think that the MX-5 with a manual is the choice for me and maybe most of you, but I can't deny this driving experience, this Roadster driving experience for people who can't drive a manual. Other than this being a little slower to exit a corner, a little slower in a straight line, the dynamic experience is very much the same. However, given that the way they've product planned these automatic MX-5s, you can't get the Bilstein dampers. And in fact, what I'm actually doing, last week I was driving a well-equipped RF MX-5 manual with the Bilstein dampers. This being a Roadster and not having the Bilstein dampers, I did notice a difference, especially on rebound. There's a little bit extra body motion with this MX-5 automatic and its regular dampers. Otherwise, in the majority of driving situations, this is still the same delightful MX-5 handling experience we know and love. Steering is fantastic, very straightforward, lots of clarity, lots of feedback through the chassis, great feel, great feedback through the brake pedal, but we just missed that engagement of having the manual gearbox. And because there is that torque converter in there, I think it does take away a little bit from the driving experience. But on the other hand, overall, what I have found, because I do live in a busy city and driving this around a very busy city, it's a little bit easier to drive this with the automatic. Still, I'd prefer the manual because it is so delightful, but it does change the driving experience and gives access to an MX-5 driving experience to a lot of people who could otherwise not experience it simply because they couldn't drive a manual transmission. How do you spec yours? Well, first things first, they product plan these a little bit differently in Canada and the US. You can't quite get this in the United States, as I'll explain in a moment. What you are looking at is my favorite paint on the MX-5, Soul Crystal Red Metallic, and that is terracotta Napa leather. It's this color combination that is not available in the United States. Base price in the US at this upper trim level is about $33,500 plus about $500 for the premium paint and $300 for premium leather. Again, you can't get this color combination. As tested, this is about $34,445 US if you could get it in this color combination. In Canada, base price is $41,000 plus $450 for the paint plus $400 for the terracotta Napa leather for a grand total as tested of $41,850, and these prices are before freight and local taxes. The biggest consideration here is, of course, the automatic gearbox. It doesn't cost you any more than the manual, but what it does mean is you don't get a limited slip diff, you don't get the Bilstein dampers, you cannot get the BBS forged wheels, and you cannot get the Recaro seats. So that if you are committing to an automatic, you are definitely committing to a completely different MX-5 program. My verdict? Let's start with fuel consumption, because it's kind of a fun thing when you drive a cool little sports car and get good fuel mileage. And here's the thing, in 6-speed manual MX-5s, I typically get about 30 miles per gallon no matter how I drive. In this one, I'm doing mixed city and highway driving. On this test, I'm getting about 27 miles per gallon. Maybe it's a little bit anecdotal, but it is 10% less than what I get normally in a 6-speed manual equipped MX-5. And that's about 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers for my Canadian friends. As for this MX-5 with the automatic transmission and whether it honors all that is sacred about the Miata, well, to a certain group of people, it certainly does. As I've learned over the years through viewers of the show, there are some people who simply cannot drive a manual transmission for various reasons. So why would we deny them the opportunity to have a fantastic open-air motoring experience in a brand new MX-5? As for those people, well, they can have the automatic. For the rest of us, well, we'll continue to save the manuals and buy our MX-5s with manual gearboxes. Thanks for hanging out with me today, having a look at this 2023 Mazda MX-5 with an automatic gearbox. Hope you liked this episode, and if you did, well, you're not new to YouTube, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this video, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store, links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even automatic MX-5s. Somebody's on their phone, sitting at a traffic light. Nice work. And we're already in the most dangerous place to drive in all of Canada, and they're looking at their phones, probably on Facebook.